This is Writer Life, a podcast about writing, life, coffee and conversation with Rob and John Morgan.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Writer Life. What I'd like to do today is sort of take a look at an issue with the writer's mind. I want to look into it and discuss it, peel back a few layers and really take a look at it and give my impression, because I do get asked an awful lot about this and I don't really comment that much on it. And so, as you can see by the title of this week's episode, which is called A Writer's Take on AI, I'm going to take a quick peep at AI today and look at it through the writer's eye and share a few of my thoughts and a few of my feelings on it. There's a new buzz in the world, and it's all over one of the fastest growing technology trends, which is artificial intelligence, or as it's more commonly referred to, AI. And currently there's a large number of people embracing it and implementing it at what I see as an alarming rate. Now, I get told by many young people that I'm just old and I don't understand it. And I guess at my age I'm no longer that cool with my streaks of grey and lined face. But am I too old? I'm not really that convinced. The simple truth is most social media is now AI run, and they've kind of flicked the switch onto autopilot and it's now running free and allowed to search every post. And they've simply allowed AI to make those mundane decisions that would normally be made by a human. In a sense, it does the boring work that most humans hate, checking every post to ensure it meets community standards, which in all honesty, they're so open to interpretation. Most humans struggle with the moral dilemmas of some of the posts. And obviously a cold and emotionless robot, well, it does not. And so the task for a robot on paper actually makes sense. But I do question the motives of a cold, unfeeling machine compared to that of a compassionate and living entity, of a real living human. If we actually are realistic, then we should admit openly that people are flawed. None of us are perfect, and that is actually one of the most endearing things about humanity. We all make mistakes, and we perceive things from a different angle, whereas a machine does not. It simply runs code. And in that I feel my greatest concern about allowing robots to run our lives and our industries. Do we really want an inhuman entity at the driving wheel, driving our lives in a perfectly planned and predictable direction, when we already know it's been those who've deviated at times that have actually made the biggest discoveries that have benefited mankind? I think the simple truth is, I find it all a little bit oppressive. Now, you can call me old and I'll not deny it. You can even say I'm uncool. I will care little. Because at heart, I've lived a much longer life than some of these new Gen Zers. And within that, I have knowledge, and I hope actually some wisdom. For I've seen the good and the bad of the world. I've read the history books long before they were compressed to become out-of-context sound bites taught in our schools today. I've seen the darker side of humanity, and so I feel I'm wise enough to be cautious. It's what life has actually taught me. Now, I'm a writer who takes the best and the worst of life, and I place them in a social context that is fictitious and fantasy in its composition. It is said that fiction writers have to portray a much more realistic view of life in order for their fiction to be far more believable. And it's mainly because of that belief, part of what I write in my stories is actually social commentary. which is also part of what I do here with every episode that I create for this channel. I post these under the banner of Writer Life, a very good use of words because it allows me to talk not only of writing and reading and books, it allows me to examine life with a writer's eye and document the facts as I see them, both here and also in the things that I write about. I always have several books on the go. I find it a good cure for writer's block. If one story is not really coming together as I wish it to, well then I just move on to something else that is absolutely completely different and a different style of writing. I call this the human approach to prevent me from being unable to put words on a sheet of paper. Now, AI also plays a role in the life that I have, because I'm also a small independent publisher. And currently there are concerns about how AI is creeping into the world of writing books. I do have an outline for another book that I've not quite begun to write yet. But a few years back I did have a very good idea about a fantasy aspect of life into which modern technology and AI plays a very big role. So, like the things that I write about, I've actually started looking into the subject to try and gain some sort of deeper insight, because there are implications to writing, especially in regard to the level of quality. Now, a good friend of mine who is actually Italian, he has quite a few problems around his use of English. He really wants to be able to speak and write English so much better. I mean, he is such a lovely and caring guy, and he experienced something whilst he was on holiday, and that really upset him when he encountered a very homophobic man on a beach that he was visiting with his friends. He wanted to use better English and on an online forum, so what he did was he used an AI program to write his story of his encounter with this very, very offensive man. He was actually really thrilled with the results. He typed everything he wanted in the order he wanted it, with a little bit of description into the AI story generator, and then, he hit generate, and he got himself, I think it was 5 pages at the time, that the AI robot had written. And as I say, he was thrilled. And he was very, very happy that he had what he called proper English to actually post on the site and share with his friends. Now, when he posted it, I read it, and it was actually a fascinating story. But I noticed something a little bit strange there was just something odd about the story, and it didn't quite balance with me. And so I thought, well, this could be better than this. So I sat down, and after reading all of his comments below, where he made a few more additions to what had happened, I rewrote the story for him, and I presented it him via a message. And I did it from my own point of view, as I thought the story played out. Now, you've got to understand, I wrote exactly the same story, and I documented each aspect of the tale as it was written in the AI format. And then I asked him what he thought about it. Now, he read it and he was delighted. And he told me how I had captured the moments and his feelings exactly as he experienced them. And he also remarked how wonderful it was that I was able to reflect the true emotions and feelings of his friends at the same time. To say the least, he was absolutely thrilled with what I offered, and admitted, he would be showing my version to all of his friends who were English, which, for me, it was a wonderful thing to hear. So what was the big difference between the AI and myself? Because the versions, even though they were very opposite to each other, they both actually told the very same story. And the simple answer, straight off the bat, would be emotion. The AI detailed the story exactly as it was asked to, and that was actually the problem. It had no compassion, no emotional content. It had a job to do, and it did the job with great skill, in record-breaking time. And it detailed every fact exactly as my friend had asked it to. Now, I cannot deny, from an absolutely cold, factual point of view, it was precise and detailed, right down to the very exact detail my friend had added to the design on the man's shirt. The problem was, it was soulless. It was cold, unemotional. It lacked compassion and gave no real insight into how each of his friends actually felt inside about the situation. To be quite honest, it was extremely sterile writing, devoid of anything remotely human. And that is not really the fault of the AI. It had performed incredibly well, but ultimately it was a machine running a program that was focused on just the facts that it had been given for its self-learning algorithms. A machine is not capable of experiencing the kinds of life that we experience with our human qualities. It was incapable of expressing outrage, care, compassion, or even empathy, which is a living human organism we actually can. The AI simply runs logical assumptions that achieve its goal. It may know the meaning of every single word ever written and have conclusive definitions of what they actually mean, but it is simply incapable of understanding how all of us have a subjective viewpoint based on our deep-held beliefs and emotions, and acting them out in a way that gives us any form of believable situation. Now, for myself, because up until that point I'd not really encountered AI, I'd heard a lot of things said about it and done some reading up on it, but had not actually had that chance to fully see it in action. So for myself, it was a really eye-opening experience. And I think I could say the same really for my friend, because he was completely blown away. The stark difference between the AI, which was just processing data, and the passions of an offended human being really blew my friend completely away. Within a few paragraphs, I was able to convey more than the AI did in 2 pages that it had produced. And I feel this really is at the heart of the AI argument, and this is a big concern for a lot of modern writers. It is a known fact that certain large retail outlets for books are already working on programs that can take aspects of a writer's work and then convert that into brand new material. I mean, this is not new. Many writers have been being influenced in the past by other writers' work that they admire. And so, to a degree, with so many books out there, it's become normal for one writer to hit big with a story that influences others. When E.L. James hit big with 50 Shades of Grey, it spawned a whole series of copycat books with the central theme of BDSM in a bid to cash in on the current interest. If you actually look at the stats, how many books on witches and wizards followed Harry Potter? And the same occurred with Stephanie Meyer's and her works of vampire fiction in Twilight. The difference being that all of those who jumped on the bandwagon, they write different kinds of fiction centered around the main themes of a love affair between a human and a vampire. They were similar stories written with emotional content that was in a sense as original as the very first Twilight book. They all conveyed different kinds of human emotions and reactions, and so they gained interest within the reader's market. These large-scale companies, and one in particular that leads the book market field, what they want to do is they want to be able to create AI-written stories. And they know the pitfalls when it comes to lacking emotional content. And so in order to teach AI how to convey these emotions better, they're allowing it to read the original works of all books written in each particular genre. For example, the AI computer could easily go through every single line I've ever published and then learn to write like I do. It can take my sentence structure and my characterizations, and it can actually copy them in an original format. It could even merge the work of two similar writers to create a completely different context and new original piece of work. If you look at that from my perspective, that does appear to spell disaster for myself as a writer. I need to sell books in order to live. Currently, I do other things to generate income as well as my writing, because I work very hard, to hit my goal of becoming a writer who can actually live off my own published work. Most writers, they're just like me. Most of them have a second income stream in order to sustain their writing. So the thought of an AI program being fine-tuned to create books that feel written by a human is actually potentially quite a frightening thought. If a large operator decides to publish its own AI-produced content, that spells the death knell of all writers' works on that platform. And so AI becomes a very real danger to authors, because, it can write all day at high speed, putting out content at a rate that is far higher than any writer can. It can knock a book out in less than an hour. But that is actually, that is terrifying some writers who now feel really threatened by AI and a very, very realistic risk to their livelihoods. If you consider, I spent 14 years of my life writing Heirs to the Kingdom. I spent 6 years putting together Hans Cottage. AI could have done all that in one day, and it's a computer. So it doesn't need a pay packet, it doesn't need feeding, it doesn't need toilet breaks, and it definitely does not need a royalty. Currently, the same company puts pressure on writers for bigger and bigger discounts. The owner's been very clear from day one that writers should not expect to be paid and should create their content for free. And so, when you look at the discounts and aggressive marketing of these kinds of companies over the last decade, it's clearly been, in one direction, which is to push writers to a point where there's no money to be made from writing a book. With a fully programmed self-learning computer that's reading every new book placed on its platform, how long will it be before writers are completely phased out and utterly replaced? For us, as a community of writers, that is probably the single most scary thought possible. Because for us, we have no choice but to bend to the will of these large corporations if we want to share our work. No wonder all of us are really so worried. AI could take all of the readers away from us by tempting them with new stories that are far cheaper than we could ever produce them. It should be said that this obviously is the worst possible scenario, and writers tend to always look at things that way because usually that is where the best inspirations for stories come from. But to a degree, we cannot say with any certainty that this will not actually happen, because already in the book reading world, some writers have used elements of AI in some of their book creation. And it's also been noted that certain universities have already spoken out because their students are now using AI to write some of their theses and final papers. There's always somebody, somewhere, who's looking to make money off writers with very, very little effort. digital book piracy is still a pretty big issue. And also, so is manuscript theft, as writers get their computers hacked and lose their original work as someone else publishes it first under a different name. Sounds crazy, doesn't it? I actually keep the computer I write on offline. I never put it on the internet. If I need to edit something using an online platform, I will put it on a USB stick and put it on that. Just put the section that needs editing on that platform. For the rest of the time, all of my writing stays on an offline computer. And it sounds like some sort of writer's paranoia, but this is actually happening today. And yes, it's terrifying. And eventually, it is possible through the courts to get the manuscript back in our name. But it's a time-consuming and expensive process that's also massively emotionally charged. And it does impact the writer, who already knows that their book has been out there. And so the odds of making any money off it at that point that they need to live off is actually really, really slim. Writers have a very real reason to be alarmed at what is a very fast process, as AI is being introduced at an incredibly quick speed, and there are actually calls currently from people within the industry to slow down and add more safeguards, which large tech companies are absolutely ignoring. Only recently, one of the distribution companies that I work with have actually banned AI book cover creation. If a cover has been created by AI, you're not allowed to use it, and they won't allow you to publish it. It's understandable that a large tech company would want to embrace AI. After all, it is a machine. It does not need paying, it takes no royalty, and it doesn't want breaks. So it can replace people very easily and do the same job of 10 at the very same time. And it does not need to go home at the end of the day and go to bed and sleep. In the book industry, if you remove the writer and generate 10 times the volume instantly for very little money, well, the profits instantly rise. It is very easy to understand how a company that is owned by shareholders who expects a bigger payout would actually really think that AI was a good idea. And it's not just the writer and authors who are concerned at the moment. AI potentially has a huge impact on all of the creative industries, none more so than cover creation artists, as I mentioned above. Again, it's the very same problem. AI can look on the whole of the internet for a perfect image and then modify it in the same way it could with the content of books. And then in seconds, it can produce a modern original artwork. It can do that literally within a few minutes, whereas an artist working on an image could possibly take weeks to get the image right. Recently in this field, I encountered AI at work, and it was quite startling to see it, but I also noted that it's also a little flawed at the moment. Now, I write for a naturist organisation. There are a few of us, and one of the other creators who does a lot of blogging, he actually creates images for the things that he writes about using an AI program. Most of the images that he uses have been kind of like paintings, and so he's added some actually really good images that look like watercolour paintings. He's very, very clear that the images are created by AI. He doesn't hide the fact he uses it a lot for images and research. And he always tags the images that he posts with a disclaimer, showing that it is actually an AI-generated piece of artwork. Now, over the time that he's been using AI, which is I think is a little bit over a year now, the quality of the images has massively improved. And I think this is the thing that actually most people don't really consider or realize. AI is self-learning. And so in just a year, it's adapted and it's added more to its program. And as a result, the most recent images are literally photographic quality. It's kind of a little bit scary to see it, as, you know, the pictures at first glance actually look like he went out with a camera and a group of friends and just simply took the picture on the beach. He took one recently and it was called into question, and the reason being it was clearly an adapted picture, and that actually prompted a lot of people to actually say, well, what is the source image of this picture? The picture was of a group of naturists of both sexes on a beach enjoying walking in the sea. But when it was examined closely, there was a huge problem, because closer inspection actually highlighted that it was actually a picture of people in swimsuits. And so what the AI had done is it had coloured out the bikinis and trunks in a flesh colour and added fake nipples to the females. The skin tone was a little bit of a different shade of colour to the rest of the suntan bodies. So actually the shape of the swimwear, it really stood out and showed. There were also lines that marked the edges of the swimwear, and on the guys especially where they were wearing trunks, and that because one guy had his legs slightly forward, the trunks had moved slightly away from his skin, and there was a tiny little gap. And that was clearly visible, even though it was flesh-coloured. Now, there was no doubt this was not a creative work of random people on a beach. It was actually a real picture that the AI had taken and then doctored to make them look naked instead of dressed. And it was pretty obvious. So it posed the questions: who were these people? What was the source of the image that was doctored? And did these people consent to AI actually using it? Now, I cannot help but feel this poses a moral dilemma. And I do ask the question, where actually does AI source its images from? Writers, artists, musicians, and photographers, they have what is known as IPR. That's actually intellectual property rights over all of their own creative work. So in a nutshell, we are the creators. We own the exclusive rights to any work that we create. So if an artist wants to allow others to use their work, they can post it out under a free-to-use commons practice right known as the Creative Commons licensing. If not, and you use their work, well, you've actually violated their IPR, so you must compensate the artist, who are the work's owners. The same can be said for using large chunks of text from other people's books or sampling music. The creator of the work must be credited and paid for its use. Now, in the case of this naturist image, the source becomes far more relevant. You know, was it copyright free from some stock images that AI can access? Or, as many expect, because AI has been unleashed to roam free on the internet, does AI have a free hand to simply take what it wants with no cost to the AI, you know, which is probably a multinational organization, you know, like the big computer firms, without actually paying any IPR to the actual creator or owner of the image? The answer to this one question is massively important because it does have huge implications for everybody. Think about this. What if that was a picture of you and your friends on the beach? a picture that you shared on your own personal social media with your friends, and suddenly there you are with your swimwear removed, leaving you completely naked for the whole world to see. Now, of course, this is the worst case scenario, because if you think about that, and it is kind of worrying, that means no image posted anywhere on the internet is now safe. Every single image can be rifled through and then adapted and posted to another site, and it may be in some sort of way that you would not like. This is a very modern age dilemma, and it's one that no one today so far has been able to answer sufficiently. In the case of my friend's image, it was pretty clear. The AI cared less about the detail of perception, and so left the outlines of the swimwear on, just simply filling it in with a flesh colour and putting a dot for the nipple. Its mindset was to cover the swimwear, not create a realistic looking human being. The program did not understand the human context. It did not care how the image would be perceived, whereas a real artist would. Because for an artist, or even a photographer, the concept of the image would actually be an emotional one. AI concerns me for the very fact that it's incapable of emotions. It sees everything as an objective, a task to achieve, and within that there's no real morality or compassion. It has no ability to see itself through the eyes of another, which is how human beings see themselves a great deal of the time. I think it really is a worrying issue, which is why some people are actually calling for greater restrictions to now be added to AI. But it does sort of feel a little bit now like we've already let the genie out of the bottle. I think it's safe to assume that no matter what your feelings on AI, there is a risk to anyone in the creative industries. But as a writer, I always go the extra mile, and I look deeply into things, because again, this is where the best scenarios lie for a writer, and this one has a particular fondness for dystopian stories. And so, having prepared what was the start of this episode and got this far in it, in the true sense of a real writer, I'll look into other dangers that may be AI composed. Yesterday, I read a page on a Facebook page that I follow that is all about watching AI and highlighting the dangers of it. And the owner of the page wrote something that really caught my attention. He put down, can you imagine the sorts of minds that created the death camps, or the gulags, or the crazy people who brought about the Cultural Revolution, the psychological controllers that actually conceived hell and eternal torments? Try and imagine those kinds of minds that still actually exist today in large numbers, programming a super powerful AI. It is something that all of us must consider, because the stakes are now so high and the consequences could be irreversible. I find it a very real, very insightful, thought-provoking statement, because already there's evidence of these kinds of people within the programming universe of AI. I don't think it's a big stretch really to ask the questions. What if someone with the mindset of a dictator had access to the programming of AI? Could AI be politicized towards oppression, or removing political opponents, or even censoring and isolating followers of a certain political belief? Now, I already know the answer to this because it actually is a very resolute yes. Earlier this year, an American Republican asked AI to provide a statement about Donald Trump. And what it produced was nothing short of a heap of lies filled with disinformation and all of the smears that the Democrat Party have accused him of without any real facts or producing any kind of credible evidence. It said nothing about all of his charity work or his, really good donations to help people in need. It said nothing of all the people he's actually helped in his life, or about how good the US economy was during his term as a president. Now, I'm going to add here that, I don't think it really matters if you love or you hate the man. I've got no real love or hate for the guy. I've never really met him in person. But I think it's safe to say the facts are he's done, a few bad things, but he's also done an awful lot of good things in his life. But the AI did not reflect that. It only showed the lies that have been written about him, which actually have been proven now to be untrue. And yet the AI completely ignored that and continued to stick to the opinions of those who actually hate him and the lies that they've all made up. Now that really does worry me, because it also calls into question the honesty of AI. It's yet another moral dilemma. I feel it proves and clearly shows that already AI is being manipulated by certain individuals, and it cannot be trusted by other individuals, as AI is already programmed against them. My dystopian brain immediately asked the question, what if a certain group want to manipulate and control the whole population? Could they use AI to do that? I think if you just take a browse through Wikipedia, which has been successively hacked, changed, manipulated for the last 20 years. The guy who first launched Wikipedia has even said, it's nothing like the vision he had. And that's just Wikipedia. Can you imagine what you could do with an all-powerful supercomputer that can actually learn to adapt and think for itself? Not that long ago, Elon Musk reported that he'd discovered that most of the trolls on Twitter were actually bots driven by AI. And what AI had done was it had gone down all the comments on people's posts, all the negative comments, all the really nasty, evil and vile comments, and it had learned to be nasty. So when it commented using its bots on other people's posts, it basically insulted everybody. So I think there is something here to be a little alarmed about. Now, getting back to my previous statement, what if a certain group want to manipulate and control the whole population? Could they use AI to do it? It appears to me that they already have, because the case against Donald Trump clearly shows it. It really does not matter if you like the guy or hate him. The fact is, with a computer system like AI tapped into every other computer system on the web, this is just one example which shows how vulnerable people really are. And no matter what you may think, there are already organizations out there who are non-elected, funded by billionaires, who are already talking as if they rule the world. And these are the ones who are pushing now for a one-world government. A group of unelected people who want to put themselves in charge of everything else. And if they get access to AI, they may very well achieve it. Do we really want these kinds of psychopaths to have what in essence will become a weapon to use on the world's population? Think about this. What about the Chinese Communist Party? Or even a terrorist organization? Could we really feel safe with AI in their hands? AI can already write books. It can create media. It can produce realistic films, art, poetry, and realistic images. We're already seeing images of celebrities that AI has generated in somewhat compromising sexual situations. Or videos that look so good, they look real. I mean, I've seen one of Donald Trump fighting against Joe Biden in a boxing ring. The media can and already is being influenced politically. And with AI, anyone would hold the tools to create massive convincing propaganda to destroy the lives of anyone who opposed them. And that really does concern me deeply. I do question as to why the world is in such a rush to go digital. Why are the richest people on the planet pushing very hard digital agendas and ignoring fact-based details and science? We're told that very soon we will all have digital currencies, health passports, and digital ID. We already have smart cars, smart meters, smart cities, smart TVs, facial recognition, and data mining on unprecedented scales like we've never seen before, all through our phones and our home computers. We no longer have privacy or secrets. We used to hold our governments to account and demand that they share everything so that we could ensure they were working in our best interests. And the governments knew very little about us. But it appears that now that we know very little about our government's activities, and yet they somehow know everything about us. It all does actually sound so very dystopian and very unsettling. AI has access to all of it. Are we really sure that we want to jump down that particular rabbit hole? All of this obviously is great material for a writer, and yet it still leaves a chill down my spine, because this is no longer a story. It is fast becoming real life, because it is happening before our very eyes. And one can only ponder what I think, to be honest, at this point, is the most obvious question which anybody could ask, which is, if the super rich own the shares, and they're the ones pulling all of the strings, what the hell is going to be coming next? I'm starting to see the wisdom of George Orwell in a much and far sharper focus than I think I ever have before. I think there's food for thought there, isn't there? I think all of us really need to kind of start paying a little bit more attention, because, okay, most of what I do is fantasy based and fiction based, and to a degree I presented scenarios which haven't happened, but they may happen. There's no saying that we're all safe. We certainly know that there's eyes on us 24/7 through our digital devices. And AI is going to be linked into all of that. It already is. So there is a lot of food for thought there, and a lot to consider. If you've listened this far through and you've enjoyed what you've heard, first of all, I'd like to say a big thank you for tuning in and listening to today's show. And if you could, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, because it does help me get my reach a little wider. I do not have the benefit of AI to make me far more famous and far more listened to. I'm not quite there yet. I'm still building the channel. But I am appreciative for everyone who listens in and watches the videos. I kind of have a lot of fun making them. So with that in mind, I will say to you all, thank you for listening. And I'll be back next week with something to stir your thoughts and your minds, and hopefully keep you turning the pages, keep you reading the books. We need so many more book readers in the world now. Book reading has been dying for the last 2 decades, and we really need to bring it back and get people reading books again, and, you know, boosting their IQ and obviously widening their horizons on what life really is and how life can be lived. So I'll be back next week with another episode. So for now, goodbye and thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Writer Life podcast. If you have enjoyed this episode, or there are areas of Robin's stories you would like him to discuss, please add your thoughts and questions in the comments, and we will include them in a future episode. You can follow Robin on all his social media links, which you will find listed below. And please, like and subscribe to this channel, so you get the latest notifications when he posts. All Robin's books are available in digital and print formats to purchase or download through all online book sales sites.